road there. Politics leading for us this hour. Plenty of unease on Conservative benches as Lee Anderson takes his place as Reform UK's first MP.
Well, in an interview with Patrick Christys on GB News last night, this is what he had to say about the defection.
It was my parents who had a big part to play in this. I know there are some idiots online saying that Lee Anderson's done what his mum's told him to do, but I think your mothers and your fathers give good advice even when you get to my age. My parents were first-time Tory voters in 2019. They put their faith in Boris Johnson and the Conservative government and in me. But 4 years later, they feel like they've been let down, that the Conservative Party have not delivered on their promises, and they think it's time for change.
Following that defection, Tory MPs are now calling for an urgent course correction from the Prime Minister.
Yeah, there are reports today, though, that Boris Johnson will make an election comeback to campaign in red wall seats. Let's get the thoughts of former Special Advisor to Michael Gove, Charlie Rowley. Good morning to you, Charlie. Look, obviously, this is going to be painful and bruising for the Prime Minister. I think there are reports around this morning of possibly as many as 10 other Tory MPs contemplating joining Reform. Could Boris change that?
Well, I think it's great if Boris does come back, if he joins the campaign in any way that he feels he's able to do so, because, as Lee was rightly saying, it was Boris Johnson that won that thumping majority in 2019, that united the party, united the country after a very, very divisive period during Brexit, and particularly in those key areas, those red wall seats in the area that Lee currently represents. So I think it would be great to see Boris Johnson back. It would be great, obviously, to see David Cameron out on the campaign trail, former Prime Minister, obviously now Foreign Secretary. I'm sure Theresa also will be, before she finally steps down from Parliament, will continue to be out and about campaigning for the Conservative Party, delivering the message that actually you should continue to vote Conservative.
It's interesting that the role of Boris Johnson, and we've talked about it a lot in this programme, what is it about Boris that means people in the red wall feel they can relate to him? Because the threat from Reform to the Conservative Party is quite evenly spread across the country. It isn't just a red wall problem. And yet Boris isn't being sent to all corners of the country. It is particularly this area. What is the cut-through that he achieves there?
So I think largely Brexit is a big part to play. So, lots of people in the red wall voted for Brexit. They felt to say that Westminster wasn't working for them just as much as the Labour Party wasn't working for them. That's why they left the Labour Party behind and voted Conservative in many cases for the very first time. So I think winning that majority in 2019, Boris is is certainly most able to go and win those people back if they do feel disaffected and disenfranchised by the party. But we all know that he's a great communicator also. He can cut through to people, where many other politicians simply can't. So I think it would be great to see him, as I say, back on the campaign bus.
And how much of a blow is it, to lose Lee Anderson, former deputy chair of the party? Will Rishi Sunak really be cursing that they suspended him at all?
Well, I think, by Lee's own admission, he didn't phrase what he said a few weeks ago in the way in which he could have done better. But the sentiment remains, and lots of people feel strongly about the issue and who runs the country and do we have control in this country. That's effectively what Lee was getting at. I think, look, anyone who leaves the Tory party will be missed. I'm sure the Prime Minister would have rather wanted him to stay. But he's taken that decision.
I mean, James Cleverly, the Home Secretary, has said that actually he's made a big mistake here and that actually all he's doing is helping Labour's cause. Are the public right to trust Lee Anderson, given that he's, this rainbow of his career, the different parties that he supported? 5 minutes ago, he absolutely believed in what the Conservatives stood for and absolutely was never going to conceive of joining Reform, and now he totally and utterly is decrying that. Is there a trust problem there?
Well, I think there'll certainly be questions asked, because he was also a Labour councillor before joining the Conservatives. So, there comes a point where you say, as a politician, do you actually sort of, champion your causes from within? Do you actually try and, make sure that the party that you're a part of is delivering in the areas that you want to? You can do that through policy discussions, you can do it through campaigning, you can do it through having great stints on brilliant TV channels like GB News. But to suddenly up sticks again and leave a political party for the second time, and we don't know how it might end with reform. He once called Richard Tice a pound shop Nigel Farage. He did go on to say that if you vote reform, that is effectively a vote for Labour, a party that he has already left. So people will question, I think, Lee's judgment in this.
And just a word finally on the issue of defection. A lot of people think that that's kind of undemocratic because you weren't voted into that constituency for that party. What has been his response to that, and is that fair enough?
Well, I think he's effectively said, look, we're not going to have a by-election because we're too close to the general election and that might just be a waste of taxpayers' money. I think, look, the people of Ashfield will ultimately decide whether they want Lee Anderson to remain as their MP, as a Reform MP, or not. But I do think it has to be taken a little bit more seriously because we don't quite know when the general election is. And I think, the people of Ashfield have a right to elect the MP for the party in which they decide, not necessarily the individual.